Iain. Welcome back to the Northland Workshop. If you're like me, you have an unlimited supply of scrap wood that is just too nice to throw away, but it's just not enough of it to make a full-blown project. Well, I finally figured out something to do with it, and that is to make this little wooden step stool. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm trying to figure out the best location to cut different parts for the step stools out of this board because it's got some pretty big knots in it and I want to make sure I avoid them as much as possible so that way I don't have them in the step stool. The other thing I want to take a look at is to make sure none of the knots look loose because I want to make sure I don't hit those with the saw blade because there's a good chance it could come launching at me. And some of these knots like this one are pretty big and I don't want to get hit with them. So now that I've got it all laid out, I can go ahead and start cutting it out on the radial arm saw. I've got the radial arm saw set up at a 10-degree bevel and I'm going to cut the top and the bottom of the leg at 10 degrees because that's the amount it's going to splay out on the little step stool. Can now go ahead and start tracing out the template for the various stool parts. I've screwed the two legs together so that way I can cut out the curves on the bandsaw at the exact same time. You'll notice that I put the screws in the waist side of the cut so that way I won't mar up the actual finished piece with a bunch of screw holes. I'm going to use the bandsaw to cut out the curves because it's an ideal tool for that. The nice thing about this is it's got enough capacity that I can cut both of them at the same time, which is going to speed it up, and I'm guaranteed to have identical legs. Also, because of how I've put them together with the bevel, I'm guaranteed to have the same curve on the same side of the stool. So that's nice, it'll all match. Some 80 grit sandpaper on a sanding drum in the drill press does a nice job smoothing up these curves. Each leg needs a notch on either side of it for the stretcher to go in. That notch needs a 10-degree cut at the bottom of it, so I've set the table of the bandsaw to 10 degrees and now I can make that cut. I can't completely finish that cut because of this angle, and if I was to try with the bandsaw I would actually end up overcutting it and that would look unsightly. So I've turned to my trusty back saw to finish up the cut. And a good sharp chisel makes quick work of cleaning up the corner. Each stretcher gets a 27-degree angle cut at the end. Each leg gets attached to the stretchers using this dado right here, and there's a corresponding one on the other end for the other leg. To cut those dados, I've set up the stacked dado head in the rail arm saw and set it to 10 degrees. I need a way to hold this little rail to the leg assembly while the glue dries. And to do that, I want to use pocket hole screws, because if I put them on the inside of this assembly, you'll never see it unless you flip the stool upside down. Well, there's an interesting challenge that comes from this. I have two different thicknesses of wood because this little rail has a 1/4 inch deep dado in it, so I only have a 1/2 inch thickness of wood left. Well, the manufacturer of the pocket hole jig I have gave me this when I bought the jig. It came in a little pack. And what this is something to help me figure out how to set this thing up for different thicknesses of wood. So we have part A, that's the part that the holes get drilled in. And we have part B, that is the piece of wood that the screws are actually going into. On the outside of this ring, we have part A thickness, and the little spinning wheel in the center is part B thickness. So if I just match the two thicknesses up, it'll tell me what to set it up to. So in this case, part A, that's the leg, is 3/4 of an inch thick, that's right here, and part B is now 1/2 inch thick because I put a 1/4 inch dado in it. So if I turn this, so I've got 3/4 of an inch for A, 1/2 inch for B. It tells me right down here to set the jig up for 3/4 inch setting and to use a 1 inch long screw. So that's what I'll do. I'll set my little jig to 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll use the 1 inch panhead screw. With some wood glue spread out in the dado, I can go ahead and slide the first leg into place, and then use the 1 inch panhead screws to attach it. The nice thing about these dados is it pretty much makes it self-aligning, so I don't even have to worry about getting things in the right position because it only goes together one way. And that's where the right angle drive paves for itself. And now I can attach the bottom to the top using pocket holes and glue.